AskReddit by Slimer425. There is a well-known saying that goes, always give the hardest job to the laziest person because they will find the easiest way to do it. What is the best real-life example to this you have seen? I once was a temp at a tiny office on a construction site in around 2003. I was only there for one day while the regular person was on some training. They sat me down and told me that I just needed to copy all these numbers from one program to another. So I selected them, hit Ctrl+C and Ctrl+V. They stared at me. Turns out about 60% of this woman's time had been spent manually typing numbers from one place to another. Had a manager that would manually delete every email from his work inbox. I'll never forget the look he gave me when I clicked the select all button that was clearly visible the entire time. I work in finance at a large multinational corporation. I feel like a big part of our job is to just stop doing things and wait to see who complains. If someone complains, we keep doing it. If silence, then we call it a controlled drop and put it on our performance review for creating efficiencies. Years ago I was completing a daily report that was saved on the shared drive that 4 different people needed. I skipped it 1 week and no one said anything. Ditto on the second week. Finally, I put a message on the report that said, if you need this report, please contact the Blue Witch, and I never touched the report again. We were recently cleaning out the shared drive, and I found that report 2013 was the last time I input anything. Maybe not the most impressive story here, but I thought it was a great sidestep of effort nonetheless. Co-worker of mine had to get rid of a smaller junk fiberglass boat with no trailer. Our other co-workers are all telling him how much time and money he's going to need to spend to get rid of it, and he's just saying, "Oh, is that so?" He took off one day and sat down on his lawn with a cooler of beer. That day was garbage day. Inevitably, the trash guys roll up. He hands each of them a cold beer and says, "Hey boys, got $50 for each of you if you help me out real quick." They fed the entire 12-foot boat into the packer, crushing 2 feet at a time. Growing up we didn't have large stuff pickup, mattresses, old appliances, that sort of thing, so anytime my dad needed something gone like that, he'd sit it by the trash can, and on trash day he'd have me put a 6-pack on the pile while I waited for the school bus, as the trash ran within minutes of the bus. It never failed, whatever was piled up was gone. I work in a semi-warehouse environment and we have to track where items are at all times. When we move X item from location A to location B, we had to type out the to and from locations. We do this hundreds of times a shift. I went online to a free barcode maker website and spent about 20 minutes making location barcodes. I save hours a day by scanning barcodes. I did something like that when I worked at a movie rental store. The computers made you sign back in after something like 15 seconds of inactivity. It was so unproductive. After a week or 2 at the job, I bought some stickers and printed barcodes onto the back of my ID badge. One barcode had my ID, the other had my password. I could scan them both in a second or 2. I avoided telling my boss cause I didn't want to get in trouble, but eventually he found out, and when he did, he had me print barcodes for everyone. Just thinking about that computer system makes me mad, and it's been over a decade. A long time ago I was sent to help a team that was designing some analog test equipment. Big problem was when 2 of the parts were at different temperatures, the calibration would go off. They wanted me to design a circuit to measure the temperatures of the 2 parts and apply a correction. I solved the problem by putting both parts on the same heatsink so they would be at the same temperature. It worked. I used to deliver beer. I did not like delivering beer. I may have ended up with 30 stops in a day, including deliveries that the customer would call into our office for. I used to bring extra beer and blank invoices with me on the truck to prevent having to drive back to my warehouse to deliver 1 keg to a place that I was currently across the street from. 7 years later, the driver of that route is still doing that. You're wise beyond your beers. Herding yak with a drone takes the cake for me. they run from it, and oddly fear it. Which is surprising considering they have literally zero aerial predators. We only did it a few times because it really makes them uneasy, and doesn't treat them well. But it is very effective and easy, and you can herd them from over one stroke to a mile away from inside the house. Edit. I'm really surprised how much this blew up. I've never had so many post replies, but I'll try to get around to answering as many questions as possible. My post history is predominantly yakking off and tower climbing stuff, so I'd suggest going there if you're curious. This is one of the most incredible paragraphs I've ever read, and I'm very much interested in hearing more about yak herding. At my last job, a truck suspension shop, we did inventory every December, and it was someone's job to count all the washers and screws of every size. It was my first inventory, and I casually mentioned that they should just weigh one screw or washer, then weigh them all and divide the weight to get the count. Everyone looked at me like I had given them the key to the universe. Counting washers and screws went from a day or two to just a few hours. Ideally, you'd want to weigh 10 or 20 to account for variations in weight. In high school we had to do 4 book reports every year. A friend of mine did his on each Lord of the Rings books and The Hobbit freshman year and turned in the same 4 book reports for the rest of his time in high school. You switched English teachers every year, so no one ever caught on. I was never brave enough to try the same thing. Deleted. I was working a kids chess summer camp with this guy who just talked down pot like you wouldn't believe, still a far better chess player than me. One day, the kids were being particularly rambunctious and I told him he had to take them outside to get their energy out. He had them spend the next hour doing American Ninja Warrior on the jungle gym playground. I hadn't even heard of the show, but it was a group of young boys like 6-12, so they all adored it. This co-worker loved to get super stoned and watch it. Don't know if he was high at the camp, but he just got to sit on a bench and tell kids their time was getting slower when they did stunts and they just scurried and jumped around faster. That reminds me when I was a teen and did after school babysitting for 2 little girls who lived in my neighborhood. I'd be tired myself after school, so I'd just let them play dress up with the clothes in my closet. They loved it and all I had to do was sit on my bed and chill out while they played. Night auditor here. Had a meeting group arriving in the morning, about 130 people, and each one was going to pay their part, but for every person I needed to insert 4 items: food, beverage, room, etc. Every item had their price, and it needed to be inserted individually and in order. Software limitations. It needed to be abdabbed etc. 130 times 4 times each individually. So I spent 20 minutes setting up a mouse macro program, and set it up to run 130 times. Lucky for me I had 2 computers and was able to do my stuff in one while the other was busy for almost 2 hours. Automated 70% of my job in a large finance firm as an intern. Never disclosed it and got paid easy money for 6 months. I spent the time doing courses and applying for my grad school. Got my admission letter during the final 2 weeks of my internship and never looked back. Pro tip: Python and Excel can be your best friend. Obligatory edit: I went to sleep and this thread blew up. Thank you for your stories, questions and comments. I'm trying to get to as many as possible. Did similar in a smaller firm. Got a 50% raise when my boss found out and he asked me to automate other work. I had an Excel order form in my last job that required us to enter all hardware items from all suppliers in by hand. I had to completely rewrite the existing script that pulled the hardware for the one supplier that it worked on, but it went from being a time-consuming, mistake-prone job to clicking a button on the order form and it doing everything and taking maybe 2 seconds for a huge job. Figuring out dynamic named ranges and getting them to work with drop-down boxes was also great. No more manually updating named ranges and drop-down boxes when new items were added. I also added in conditional formatting everywhere to let the user know if there was an incomplete section on the form. No more work when the next person down the line sent the form back to us incomplete. The thing I was really happy with was being able to cut the length of that script down by about 65% from what it originally was. Yeah, got me on that last thing. Was a temp. Got hired for the day to print 30 packets with 100 pages each. Why would it take a day? I asked. Our printer doesn't collate the pages, so it will take you the day to sort the pages into the 30 packets, they said. Right. It was a standard office Xerox printer. It took me all of 30 seconds to find and click the collate button. Click the staple button while at it. All got printed by itself into nice stapled packets, and I got paid to browse internet for the day. They thought I was a genius for fixing their printer and gave me glowing recommendations to the temp agency that led to more jobs. Deleted. Was tiling a bathroom floor. One young guy I was working with was cleaning up when we were done. I told him to take the leftover tile back downstairs to the truck, and then went back to cleaning what I was doing. 10 seconds later I hear this huge crash and then a soft toe. Right. He had gone out onto the balcony and dropped them down to the truck, shattering over $100 worth of tile. He said he thought it would be faster. He wasn't exactly wrong. That's a special kind of stupid. But also $100 of tile is probably like 8 tiles lol, right? I'm home for Christmas break and I met up with my old boss to do some flooring, and holy hell does tile suck in winter. I remember having to peel 20 kilograms of charred eggplants at a restaurant I worked in. I asked the chef if there was an easier way to do it. His reply was yep, get someone else to do it. I always ask chefs I come across any tips they have about garlic. One recommended sprinkling salt over the chopping board first. The salt absorbs garlic flavoring and you can use it as seasoning. Another said to put a whole bunch in some oil, heat it lightly in a pan in the oven, giving sweet garlic plus garlic oil. The best one ever though was get the apprentice to peel it. I ain't got time for that shit. Deleted. Made a Python app to some of us that sounds like magic beyond our comprehension. Well done. My parents were having a summer get together a couple of years ago and my dad wanted my brother and me to dig a small pit for a bonfire. He handed us 2 shovels and left us to dig. My brother went and started up our old tractor, drove it across the lawn, dropped the bucket into the earth and drove forward a few feet. The pit ended up a little larger than what we had planned, but once we lined it with stones it was actually a pretty nice pit. Edited my brother and I to my brother and me. Machine N, a device consisting of fixed and moving parts that modifies mechanical energy and transmits it in a more useful form. And X200B. Emphasis mine. Recognizing the importance of that has saved me a hell of a lot of work in my life. My girlfriend is lawyer and I'm developer. At her place they manually compared documents they received after the other party signed them. It is not uncommon the other party to add something or remove something from contract without track changes, etc. So I taught her how to use diff compare program that works not only with code, but all kind of docs. She already caught some attempts for the other side to modify long contracts without consent. So comparing docs went from hour long to minute long task. When lawyers finally start using technology well, the billable hour will be in peril. A programmer outsourced his own job overseas, paying Chinese programmers 1/5 of his salary to write code for him, while he spent his days surfing Reddit and watching cat videos. His performance reviews praised him for clean, well-written code and called him the best developer in the building. https://www.cnn.com/2013/01/business/us-outsource-job-china/index.html This reminded me of an Onion video where eventually the outsourced workers outsource the outsourced work. There's a story that I've heard a few dozen times about a toothpaste company that had accidentally sent out cases of their product that had a few empty single boxes of toothpaste. The company had endeavored not only to rectify their mistake, but to ensure they did not repeat it. They hired an engineering company that designed a scale and alarm shutdown system. If an empty carton was passed down the production line, klaxons would be triggered, and a full stop would initiate until the offending box was recovered, and an all clear had been entered into the computer system, before production could resume. The company paid through the nose, but was ultimately pleased with their failsafe, and the engineers patted each other on the back. A few months pass, and the engineers return for quality control. The toothpaste company reported zero margin of error for weeks. Turns out, one of them in. Imagine slowing down production for a $3 product not being in the box. They could have installed a boxing glove to just punch off the defective product. I read a comment on here a while back about a college kid who picked up an office job over one summer. He became friends with an older lady at the front desk who always needed help figuring out Excel. He kept finding shortcuts for her, and eventually wrote scripts for her that took a load of work off her plate. By the end of the summer he had made her job so easy that they decided they didn't need her to do it anymore. They fired her. I was in a similar situation, although no one got fired thankfully. I inherited a job where the last person spent half their time manually typing numbers into Excel. I turned a bunch of 5-hour jobs into 5-minute jobs and made the job really easy. I was only in a 1-year assignment and spent a lot of it automating everything and got a promotion afterwards, so it all worked out. Still though, using technology right can get rid of a lot of jobs. I work in corporate finance, and we can do the same stuff with a team of 4 that 20 people were doing 30 years ago. I did this. A few years back, I was roommates with a super mechanically inclined dude. Our top-loading clothes washer stopped working well because the lid got a little warped and didn't trip the safe switch for the spin cycle to run anymore. He was all geared up to pull the washer out, take it apart, bend the lid back into proper shape, and reseat the sensor so it would run properly. I told him to hold off. I put a load of laundry in, and popped a 1/4-inch shim under the lid. It ran perfectly. I have an example of how the truly lazy will sabotage tracking so no one knows shit is broken. There was this guy at a software company that does integrated software systems. He hated his boss and his job and apparently most of his team. Every time he was assigned a bug to fix, he would mark it resolved and assign it to a no-reply email address associated with the team. The odd thing that I don't understand is how he managed to keep issues from getting escalated to other real people. At any rate, no one caught on. When he found a new job and a couple people on his team took him out for drinks, he said, "You should look into all the bugs I fixed." I never did any of that, so the guys who took him out for drinks went back and audited his work and were like, holy fuck. He not only did nothing, he had identified issues for like a year. How is that even possible? He just straight up ignored bugs and nobody noticed. That's crazy. My friend who'd take his baby's clothes off when he fed him. Next level brilliant. Spray the kid off after. Good plan, until that baby starts preschool and proceeds to strip off his clothes every day before lunch. I worked at a chain restaurant and in my last few months there we got those stupid tables I asked that customers could pay at. There was a survey at the end of every transaction and our managers added new performance metrics based on how many people paid using the Zyaask and also how well our service was based on the surveys. One asshole would just fill the surveys out himself after his customers left and gave himself 5 stars and everything. Dude was always ranked top of the servers. Fucking genius. I worked at chain restaurant and my first manager literally told us to do surveys for ourselves so our store would be near the top of the district. My dad and I were working on my grandma's water heater a couple of years ago. We needed a cork or something to go over the end of the pipe. I had a bottle of Coke in my hand. I downed the Coke and put the cap on the end of the pipe as a joke, but it fit perfectly, so we kept it there. When my grandma sold the house 5 years later, that cap was still on the end of the pipe. I wasn't necessarily the laziest person, but I was the DLH, designated light holder, and I was providing emotional support through smartest comments, so I was definitely taking the job the least seriously. Wait, you plugged the pressure relief excess pipe for the water heater? And the home inspector in the sale didn't call that out? When sweeping the concession stand at the movie theater I work at, instead of using the dustpan to slowly pick up all the trash, I sweep it all to one end and put the trash can on the floor and sweep it straight into there. In one of my earlier jobs I spent about 2 months automating everything I did. Thereafter, I spent my days in air-conditioned isolation reading, hacking out entirely unrelated programs, engaging in protracted debates on Usenet, and responding to the very rare client problem. Things seemed to be running smoothly, so I took a couple weeks of vacation. When I returned from holiday I was told that everything had run so smoothly in my absence that my services would no longer be needed. I had lasered myself redundant. The key is to take off your automated processes so that the place turns into a total shitshow without you. Can't be let go for redundancy if your absence makes everything a dumpster fire. I distinguish 4 types. There are clever, hardworking, stupid, and lazy officers. Usually 2 characteristics are combined. Some are clever and hardworking. Their place is the general staff. The next ones are stupid and lazy. They make up 90% of every army and are suited to routine duties. Anyone who is both clever and lazy is qualified for the highest leadership duties, because he possesses the mental clarity and strength of nerve necessary for difficult decisions. One must beware of anyone who is both stupid and hardworking. He must not be entrusted with any responsibility because he will always only cause damage. https://en.wikiquote.org/wiki/Kurt_von_Hammerstein-Eckward. The joys of being a parent. As the parent of 2 hyperactive boys, I invented a game called the steamroller game. I would lie down across one end of the bed and the kids would start jumping. At some random point I would make a motor noise and roll across the bed. If they didn't jump in time I would roll right over them. They loved that game. I just invented it because I wanted to lie down for a few minutes. The only thing I can take away from this is: do not let your company know that you've automated your job. Someone gave me a report they'd been doing manually for literally years, using nothing but Excel and Access databases that took 2 people upwards of nearly 3 hours to complete. Got that shit automated down to 30 seconds in a few days. I'm not about your stupid VLOOKUP bullshit, Brittany. What did you use to do the automation? I am in rat quote and I don't like it. When I was at university I had an help desk job for one of the colleges. My team was tasked with taking inventory on every computer in every room of like 5 buildings. Computer AIM, some college ID code, the Dell serial number, all kinds of stuff. I mean, it took ages to gather all the information in just one room. About a week into the process, I decided that I'd had enough of manual writing everything down. On my work machine I just started running all of the getcmd commands I could find, and eventually had a batch file on a flash drive that would just save a computer's information as a txt file on the flash drive. So I'd walk into a room, log into each computer, run my file, then log off. I went from doing a couple of rooms a day to doing a couple of floors a day. I still had to input everything into the system, but that felt great. Plus you're not going to make typos if it's copying it directly. That's the way to do it. Got hired for a 3-week temp job that was transporting strings of text from a text document that the company's app produced into separate Excel sheets relating to what the string in the text document was. It was hundreds of thousands of lines of records of which office was printing, calling, emailing, basically any time the network was used. They were making graphs about how much of call time was to what department customer etc. and things like that. Yeah, just wrote a script that read the first couple words, determined which Excel sheet for which string, then watched TV for the rest of the 2 weeks. It ran 24/7 while I finished a bunch of Netflix shows. It worked perfectly, and the company paid me extra to keep using the script I had written. To make things better, someone shut the computer down and couldn't figure out how to restart the script properly, so I came in and restarted it for an extra $50. Best 3 weeks of my life. Teacher here. We have a K 3rd grade classroom with mixed ages. This year, we decided to assign a big project in pairs. We have a 3rd grade boy who's cynical, argumentative, and refuses to do work even though he's extremely intelligent and capable. We decided in an effort to get work out of him, we'd pair him with a very energetic kindergarten boy that has underdeveloped, 5-year-old, reading and writing skills. Anyway, the older boy typed sentences on the computer in big 20-point text and gave it to the kindergarten boy to trace on our light board, as well as pictures to color. Well played. I have a friend who started a business, and essentially has a life goal of making the most money possible by doing the least work possible. He busted his ass until he could start buying equipment piece by piece, designed new equipment and tools to make things easier and faster, and then just kept doing it. He went from being able to produce like 25-30 items in a month to producing enough product in a month that people think he is a whole team of people. He makes like 1,000 plus items a month now. It's just him with a garage and 2 sheds full of equipment. He just moves from station to station, doing a full assembly line by himself. I feel like if someone gave him some serious investment he could accomplish some absolutely crazy things. Back in high school I was taking a chemistry test. Our teacher gave us a packet of 150 random questions with the answers on it, where 50 would be on the final test. We could use our notes and bring anything in we wanted for the test, no electronics. His idea was nobody was going to be able to look through the randomly ordered packet of questions and answers and be able to answer all the questions in the hour we had, so it was fine to give us. Anyways, here comes test day and my friend and I made a list of every question in alphabetical order and by the first word. For example, if it started with what is, that would be a category. We then proceeded to pass out 20 of our own packets of notes to the entire class and we all use them. Everyone got an A and the teacher wasn't even mad. Junior quantity surveyor. My boss used to make me check the calculations on bills of quantities from contractors. They were always typed and printed, but he would make me do it by hand because he had never experienced actual happiness and wanted everyone else to suffer. I would just unbind the bills, whack them in the scanner, OCR that shit, then select, copy, paste into Excel. Made a 6-day job into a 1-day job and 5 days of chatting on MySpace to goth girls. This was at my first job at McDonald's. Every time a customer filled out a receipt survey we got a $5 gift card. For a college student, that's a lot of money, so I would take home all the leftover receipts after my shift and fill them all out under my name. My coworker's solution was to just disappear for 75% of her shift and just leave me to do it. Back in my army days, we were on exercise and tasked to dig in the armored vehicles. This normally involves shoveling dirt mounds up around the sides of the vehicles which face the security perimeter. The squadron sergeant major who tasked us anticipated it would keep the soldiers busy for the best part of the week we were scheduled to be in location. As soon as the SSM and boss left for the formation orders briefing, an enterprising young trooper jumped on the radio and called the engineer detachment that was a few kms down the road. The engineers brought 2 bulldozers and quickly got to work. 40 minutes later, when the SSM and OC returned from orders, the engineers were long gone. The rank pulled into the defensive position to see 12 armored personnel carriers fully dug in and 3 empty positions ready for their convoy to slot into. It was the best case of beer I've ever bought. In my first proper job, I got unexpectedly promoted to a mixed developer sysadmin role, where a large part of my job was setting up accounts for students, giving them access to some form of public web space, emails and mailing lists, etc. The guy before me had done everything by hand, so the tasks took hours to do. Being lazy, I scripted automated the lot, got it down to a handful of minutes work, then spent the rest of the day reading in the peace and quiet of the server room. It was the early 2000s, so the internet was still a bit voodoo to most people. To add a bit of authenticity, I also captured the output of an Apache compile, and used to redump it out on the screen to make it look like my console was super busy. Wanted a break? Just turn on the dump, hang a sign saying busy compiling, don't touch, and then wander off around the busy university campus and pretend I was a student. Good times. Electrical engineer here. I'm pretty sure my entire field exists out of laziness. I think all fields exist out of some degree of laziness, since we develop technology, and by extension most fields out of a desire to do less manual work. Other fields were developed to take advantage of the hard work of others for little work, though those have mostly shifted away now. Eating Cheetos with chopsticks so you don't have to wipe your fingers while playing video games. Edit. Thank you for the gold, kind stranger. One of my favorite webcomics, http://wondermark.com/601/. Was me. Supervisor wanted me and another guy mark the hydraulic hoses in this pit so second shift could jump right in and start replacing. Fine, but that involved someone jet in a harness, waiting for security to come sniff the pit for gases, fill out confined space forms, get them signed, etc. I asked, do they have to be marked in any order or way? Supervisor said no, just need some kinda identifying mark. So I said okay, got it. Told the other guy to hop on my cart to see what we need and to bring a broom. He was like okay. So on my way over there I said yeah, see how I asked if he just wanted them marked? Yay. Well, using this yellow paint pen, that broom handle and some electrical tape, I bet we can mark them through the floor. Great. Sure enough, drew a yellow line down a section of each hose. Haha. Came back and supervisor was like, well? I said, well what? We marked him, it's done. What, how? This is a great example. I've done something similar too. We had to mark all of the outgoing parts boxes for recall. A huge stacked pile. Was told to just mark them with red, so I taped a fat Sharpie on a right angle to my tine, got on my forklift and drove past them a few times, lifting up and down, done in 10 minutes. My grandpa got tired of checking the systems individually on the helicopters he worked on in the Air Force, so he built a machine that he could roll up to the helicopter, attach all the necessary things, and take all the readings at once. Saved him tons of time and he didn't have to move around a bunch of different things. My dad has a picture of him and some COs standing in front of it as he got a commendation for it. Edit. A commendation, not an accommodation. Every programmer ever. I'm currently in college studying computer science and have been doing it since freshman year of high school, and one of the things my high school CS teacher told me over those 4 years was that programmers are the laziest humans on earth. Also that it doesn't matter how idiot prof you make your program, God will always make a better idiot. Myself. Worked for a semiconductor company and we had 9 interns running simulations to optimize a substrate for a new semiconductor called 3D Crossbar.